Okay, Tom, well, we're gathered here to celebrate a number of things that you've done. I had to tell you, going back a little bit, that the moment George brought you here a couple of years ago, that was one of the moments of my greatest joy as a scientist, is to say, hey, here's somebody that can unlock some of the mysteries for us and help us to understand the physical sciences better, because we know they're changing. And that, I celebrated that moment. George saw how much I was smiling and laughing and everything else. So, and we've had a lot of laughs since. The occasion for this today is to introduce what will become a library. We will have a library, whatever we end up naming it, the Science of Science or the Generativity Library, because those things are really highly related. And we're initiating it with the first two books that you've done. And we thought we'd take the occasion today to spend however much time you choose with George Banks and Don Benoit to explore what we think is one of the most important findings of our time, that you've encapsulated in the book you call The Fifth Force. And we think that this is a new perspective on the physical sciences and just a new way of looking at the universes. So if you could pick it up with that kind of introduction, feel free, please.
I would like to, and if possibly, I would like to first show the book so it's visible. The Fifth Force is the modernistic view of physics, and it is an absolutely scientific and mathematical and completely describing a new force of very high magnitude. And if anybody reads it, they will understand the magnitude of the force, the units of the force, and it's totally mathematical. And it's based on the force that existed prior to mass, prior to charges, as is described. And what is that kind of force? Well, it is a force of radiation. This is the beginning. This is where the Big Bang started, before we had matter and charges. And once you have that possibility, you will understand that the force could extend all the way to present date. And you could still go back and do mathematical analysis and get back to that same force that existed in the beginning of what we call the Big Bang, the universe. So it is a natural force. Units are that of the force, just like Newton. Units of Newton are used for forces. The units of that are force unit, and it is a physical reality that exists to present date and has a beginning right at the Big Bang. And it is absolutely based on radiation. This is a terminology I'm using that people will be not aware of it. They understand radiation as maybe X-ray, maybe as photonic light. Everything radiates. It's not a coincidence that everything in the universe radiates. It must radiate. And if it doesn't radiate, we have no observation. We cannot observe a universe that does not radiate. And by the way, 95% of the universe seems to be missing, which is apparently not radiating. So the question is, why? What was the Big Bang? What kind of a system was a Big Bang? Well, the fact is that we think the Big Bang was the beginning of our universe. Actually, the Big Bang was the end of different era. The Big Bang was the end of radiation system and the beginning of material system. And that's why the question of radiation becomes very important, because the question of system and boundary has not been understood clearly. There is no system that could exist in thermodynamics that does not have a boundary. To have a system, you must have boundary. This is very similar to have a nation, you must have borders. And if you compare what does the system have, you say the system has energy, that's interior, just like a nation has citizens. But to cross from that interior to the boundary, like every citizen that must cross that boundary, you must carry a passport. You must exit. There's a transformation of energy from the system to the boundary. That is not the same. Most people think radiation is energy. The units of radiation are not that of energy. Radiation has different units, and we describe them as wavelength and so forth. But units of energy are units of energy. We understand what those are. So there's a system that occupies energy, and by the time it gets to the boundary, transformation has taken place. Now radiation has to be emitted. So it's not a coincidence that everything in the universe that we observe must radiate. That's a law. The reason why we are here, we're sitting here, we all came from different directions, we gathered here because something is keeping us here. Is this information? We're exchanging information back and forth. Yeah. And everything in nature is the same. We are actually nature. We're behaving simultaneously exactly as everything else in nature behaves. We do not create our own, conditions. Conditions are set up by the physical law, fundamental laws of nature.
Is the culture of the physical scientists, the science of physics, are they ready to consider the implications of your fifth force?
The fifth force had an implication which created the universe. It will still have implication as we become more and more intelligent. In other words, we are seedlings, we at this time, that we are probably either evolving or creating more higher system of intelligence, whether it's through our computer systems or integrate with us or in the future time. The fifth force is truly a force of an extreme magnitude. It exists and it will have implications. By all means, it will have implications. And nature absolutely understands there is a fifth force and behaves as such.
It is, the fifth force is part of the elevating of the intelligence system, which means that we no longer define the force fields in terms of the first four forces.
That is correct. The first four forces realistically are actually starting, chronologically speaking, after the fifth force. In other words, there was a parent force that existed. Obviously, it existed before matter. You cannot have gravity without material objects. So it existed before that, and it existed before the other four forces. Because if you didn't have atoms and nucleic systems, you must have had something else. The fifth force existed, and that's the way nature seems to be working. That what's there before what now exists, well, something was there. We understand that very well, and the fifth force book explains it very well, totally within few pages, that mathematically we cannot deny. This is proof. This is not a theoretical work only based on an idea. This is absolutely mathematical. It's totally mathematical, which is a language. It's a language of universe.
Kind of a reverse logic. The fifth force is the parent of the first four forces.
The fifth force, yes, In other words, yes. Which one came first? The fifth force.
Right.
Is the fifth force still here? That's the whole thing. Yes. Now that's the almost paradoxical statement. If you say parent are initially chronologically first,
Right.
but then the children and grandchildren, everybody else will remain after them. But imagine there was a parent that stayed with
Forever.
all the generations forever. That is strangest
Yeah.
philosophy you could find. Like, why? Why is it still here with us? Invariant. And all other forces change with respect to distances. Okay? They're related to the distance. The fifth force doesn't seem to be behaving like that. The fifth force is invariant, which means it is exactly what it is, what it was. That is very different. And our logic, if you use chronology, my parents were here before me, and my great-great-grandchildren will be after me. And I would say, well, no, they will be with me living in my same house. But they may not see me or not realize that I'm there, but the fact is that, yes, I am. And I haven't changed. So imagine the age did not matter. The fifth force is a force time independent. That is another strange thing about it. It is time independent.
Why did they not look for this historically?
I believe they are, and they were. I believe the mathematic part of it, you know, truly mathematics, as I say, is information. It's a language of universe. Just like in any language, there are some vocabularies that we have not created yet. There are parts of mathematics that has not been created yet. That's a fact. And we shouldn't be shocked about it. We don't know it all. You know, and we shouldn't be acting as if we do. And so only when you get to that part of language, imagine if in 26 letters of English language we were missing 5. Now, how would you write a sentence? You wouldn't till you have those 5. And imagine later on down the line somebody will discover those 5 and you will write a sentence. Now the fifth force, the beauty of it is this. Even though it's extremely mathematical, and anybody that reads the book, they will understand the complication and detailed mathematics. But the beauty of physics is this. Will it eventually come down to something very simple? Can you show me the fifth force by formulas, such as, let's say, Einstein says E equals mc squared. Every child knows that. Could you show me that the fifth force, the details of mathematics will converge into something very simple format? And the answer is absolutely. That's the beauty of this. Actually, somewhere back here, the fifth force converges from all its mathematical complexity to something very, very, very simple, which is, bottom line, speed of light to power 4 divided by Newton's gravitational constant. This is the beauty of the fifth force. Now, this is no kidding. You're going from the complex mathematics and you come up with the speed of light to power 4 divided by Newton's gravitational constant. I didn't say it. Mathematics said it. Just like Einstein said that E equals mc squared. Fifth force says I'm c to the power 4 over g. That is amazing. This is what truly convinced me there is a fifth force. And by the way, both speed of light and Newton gravitational constant are invariant universally. Therefore, that is an invariant
So
force.
this book is really the generative product of the fifth force. It produced an equation for you.
Absolutely, yeah. And if it's not producing an equation through our detailed mathematical work, then we are left with one idea that maybe it's too complex and we're not there yet. If it does produce a simplistic equation and has the units of force, by the way, not only an equation, because you say speed of light to power 4 divided by Newtonian gravitation constant, the units are force, same as force of gravity, the units are the same. Same as electromagnetic force, the units are the same. Same as strong force, yes. And weak force, yes. So the answer is yes.